have reached the parking lot of Willick Engineering and I am about to meet Dan, CEO of Willick Engineering. Thank you so much for joining today.
My pleasure.
Dan.
Good afternoon.
I remember the first time we met was at the ASNT conference through the AATA booth. Our booth was right next to each other.
Yes.
And John introduced me to you and the other Willick Engineering team. Second time we met was at your cruise party, right? That's where you invited me and Megan. It was an amazing cruise party and we got to know each other well. And I got to know your stories about what you do in NDT, and it was pretty interesting. So I decided...
You enjoyed yourselves.
Yep. So I decided let me invite you to have a talk with you, so I can share your experience and your advice with the younger generation and new people in this industry. So thank you so much for joining today.
My pleasure.
Starting with your childhood, what did you actually dream of becoming?
Well, as a child during high school, I knew that I enjoyed working with technical things to the point where in the garage I had electronics drawer with resistors and all of the components that I could gather for learning about electronics. I just had a passion for technical electronics, and I would even take, my parents didn't have a lot of money, so I would actually take radios and TVs out of trash cans and bring them inside, break them open. So I had a passion just for how things work. And I would go library, try to figure out as much as I could on my own. And sometimes I would fix these things, and sometimes I would break good things that I shouldn't have taken apart in the first place, just trying to figure out how they work. So my passion was always figuring out what makes things work. So if somebody gives me a computer, I know that I'm going to have to take it apart and dissect all the pieces and figure out, okay, just what does the motherboard do, what does the hard drive do, what does the memory do, and how do they all work together, more than actually using the thing. So my dream was to, actually I thought I was going to work in a lab, in a clean room. I didn't want to talk to people, I just wanted technical things to repair and just leave me alone and I fix.
So how did this passion get you into NDT? How was it that you got introduced to NDT, and how did you get to being a CEO from where you started?
Okay, well, to make a long story short, I know we're pressed for time, but as I said, my passion was for electronics, and it was a hobby of mine. My neighbors in the neighborhood, they all knew this because they could see the things I was building and repairing. Eventually, as I was about to graduate high school, I knew I wanted to go into a technical field, and my first choice was to join the Air Force as an aircraft electronic. So that was really my passion. Okay. I took the ASVAB test, scored fairly high on it, and I actually qualified for the position. But through no fault of mine, I was not a U.S. citizen at that time, and they said, you did really well on your test, and we would glad to offer you a position in mess hall. And I said, well, I completely understand the security concerns. I don't know why I didn't think of that, but I think I can do better somewhere else. So thank you very much. We shook hands, and I ended up serving my country better working as a civilian, because eventually my neighbors caught on to this knack or this passion that I had for repair and fixing things. I started going to college for electronics, and my neighbor across the street had just purchased the Willick Engineering from Edward Willick, and I was the first employee that he hired when I was 18 years old.
Wow. Okay.
So this is really just a summer job for me. It was a part-time summer job, and as I said, long story short, I started traveling all over the country repairing equipment as I worked for electronics in hospitals, in aerospace, military facilities, in manufacturing, fabrication plants, castings facilities for wheel industry, aluminum castings, steel mills, everything that's used for NDT. So I was the electronics technician that would be called on site for emergency repair when the machine failed. And that's my passion. I know that a lot of people have a passion for actually making the radiographs. But that's how I started. I started repairing the equipment when I was 18 years old. So a lot of the customers that I support now as a manufacturer of larger systems, these are people that I started supporting when I was 18 years old by repairing their equipment. Okay, so eventually I got pretty good at repairing this stuff, but I wanted to know more about how my customers use this equipment. So I enrolled as radiographer level 1, radiographer level 2, radiographer level 3 refresher. Didn't finish my ASNT level 3 because really my interest was as a repair guy. What is my customer going to do with this film? How do we improve on this technique? So if somebody calls me and says my machine's broken, I have no X-ray or light film density, I have to be able to determine whether it's not just the X-ray machine, but it could be the processor or it could be something else. But so that was my interest for pursuing the radiographic aspect of it. Eventually, basically, how did I move up to CEO? Is I think that sticking my neck out and doing things that other people didn't want to do. So if, let's say, an opportunity came up, there was let's say a department was having trouble, and I could sense that maybe there was something not going right with that person, and so I could see something going wrong. I would actually go back in school. I went back to college and took accounting courses. So I saw an opportunity where there was something going on with accounting, and so I went back, took intro to accounting, intermediate accounting, advanced accounting. Just tell me what I need to know, and eventually I understood the nuts and bolts of double entry accounting system. Now knowing the technical side and the accounting side, I was actually at some point managing the field service department. That one thing led to another. I was then managing the entire company. When there was an opportunity to, let's say I saw the sales department in trouble, even though I was general manager at the time, I would go to the owner of the company and I would say, I'm your guy. Okay, I've been here a long time. I repaired the equipment.
Right.
People know me because I've been fixing their stuff. And now I know the insides and outs on how to make radiographs. I know the financial side, so why don't you put me in sales?
Wow.
And so that's kind of how I learn, is trial by fire. So put me in an area that I haven't done before, and I'll figure it out. So I ended up actually doing sales for many years. At that point, after doing accounting and service and everything else, I pretty much did most of the things that people would do in this company. When it was time for the owner of the company to retire, he knew I was ready to run the company, so he would need somebody successful that could continue to be profitable with the company.
Right.
And I was kind of his ticket out. So I helped him, he helped me. We worked out an agreement, and the rest is still history. Well, now I've been with the company for 30 years. I'm looking at the business from a different point of view as an employer. Now I have to make management decisions about who gets hired, who gets fired, and everything else in between. Yeah. So that's one of the things when I look at motivated people within the company, one thing stands out is there are people that are just comfortable with the status quo, so just doing what they're doing. I never hear from them, and they're happy like that.
Right.
And okay, that's your idea of success, then you're successful.
That's right.
But there are those also that will come to me and say, well, okay, I've already caught on to this. What do I need to do to get better at digital imaging? Or I want to learn about this, or they'll see a new opportunity.
Right.
Perhaps we spoke to a rep at one of the ASNT trade shows, and because we have a sales division, that there's an opportunity to sell ultrasonic sensors. And even though that's completely out of our industry, if somebody would see an opportunity and they would say, hey, I want to go back to school and take a UT level 1, a UT level 2, I think I can run with that. And And they make themselves valuable, not just valuable to the company, but they're adding a capability that the company didn't have before.
Right.
At that point, to a company, they make themselves indispensable.
Right. Good. So yeah, that's gonna be one of my that was one of my questions actually, because so when you look to hire new people at Willick Engineering, obviously now we know what you're looking for, but in some cases, so not everyone has the chance to go back to college and spend money to get education. And I've seen so many people, they want to get education in order to learn something new, but they just don't have the money to put in. They're just thinking about the college debt that they're going to accrue. Mm-hmm. So in this case, what would you suggest to people like this who want to learn something, go back to college, but they're restricted by their financial situation?
Well, as I said, one of the things I can see being restricted financially if you have if you're going for directly into a 4-year university, but okay, not everybody was designed to have a master's degree in something. There are great opportunities in trades. A lot of the although still quite expensive, a lot of the electronics people that we hired came from ITT school or DeVry, which are more of a trade school. Okay, so that's still a method of obtaining an associate of science or a bachelor's degree in a technical field. There are many other trade schools. Well, what you guys are doing with American Aerospace Technical Academy, that's a great thing. And we take, sometimes we'll take 1 or 2 apprenticeship people from, we've done this at the high school level, we've done this sometimes through AATA. We actually hired somebody from AATA through an apprenticeship program. So my background is all apprenticeship. I understand a lot of that has to do with being at the right place at the right time. So a lot of people would say, well, that guy's lucky because he was just at the right place at the right time.
Right.
But one of the GE engineers, who was one of my mentors through here, Richard Holste, would constantly tell me that luck always favors the prepared mind. So if you don't prepare yourself, right, and put yourself in an opportunity to be useful, the door's not going to open.
There you go. Beautiful. Awesome. If you were to start again, right from 18 years old, when your neighbor across the street offered you a job, right? What are the things from then on to now 30 years into Willick Engineering that you learned something which you would avoid doing in order to speed up your career growth, or some experiences that you learned which were really helpful for you? So good and bad experiences that you had in these 30 years, which you would put to your advantage if you had to restart. What would those be?
Well, I think that starting at 18 years old, by the time I was in my mid-20s, I've been up here for 30 years, so there's something to be said for sticking to something and never giving up, because there were some tough times where I just wanted to quit. My boss and I didn't always get along. Sometimes I wanted to just, maybe I shouldn't be here for 20 years. What else? I want to know what else is out there. So at one point I actually started a computer networking business. So on the side I was setting up and troubleshooting networks for a company, just because I wanted to do something else on the side and learn something different. But in my 20s and 30s, I think I was pretty relaxed, goofing around. I didn't really pay a lot of attention to my education, and what I would have done different. I think that education is extremely valuable, and striving for. If at that point where it was financially possible for me to go back to university and finish my bachelor's or finish my master's, that's something I would like to do.
Got it. And Is there anything that you learned in your 30 years that you would recommend new people to avoid doing? Like anything that pops up in your mind, they would say, okay, here's the thing that you don't want to do if you want to succeed faster in your career.
Well,
not necessarily you've done this,
right.
but you've seen other people do it and you want to share it, that please don't do this, it affects your career.
Yeah, well, let me think of one that stands out more than another. Well, I think being able to work with other people is one of the most important things. Being open to doing other tasks. Maybe you came in hired to do one task, but maybe there's a group or a department that needs you in another area. If the manager puts you in a different area, there's one attitude that's very helpful, that's going to go out there and do it. But there are other attitudes that would say, it's not my job, that's not what I came here for. I got my certificate in doing this. When am I going to get my raise? Right. That's what I would avoid doing. I think the more flexibility the person has, the more value they will be for the company, and then you can make your demands later.
Very good point. What is the most interesting part of your job at Willick Engineering? What's the most interesting NDT project you've done so far?
Well, the most interesting part at Willick Engineering is working on a number of different jobs every week. So, I mean, you would think working 30 years at the same job is kind of boring because you're doing the same thing,
right.
But we're not, because we work with so many different industries, with aerospace, military. We right now are doing all of the service work at SpaceX, so we get to see a lot of the new technology being developed at SpaceX. At Virgin Galactic, we've had the opportunity to shoot a solid rocket booster out in the middle of the Mojave Desert with the wind blowing at 60 miles an hour in our face, about 100 degrees. Sounds uncomfortable, but it's fun learning new technologies. We're working with other industries, the manufacturing industry. So we worked on some old rifles that are historical, double-barrel, powder-loaded rifles that apparently some people like to take elephant gun hunting or something, and they could potentially blow up in their faces because there wasn't a lot of quality control done back then. So there was a collector that brought a lot of these things. We see a lot of new applications like this. Quite a bit of work with archaeology. We do work with the Getty Center, the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. We work with what is another museum they work with? I think one project I talked to you about with the Battle of Anghiari, Leonardo da Vinci, the search for the Battle of Anghiari, Leonardo da Vinci's acclaimed masterpiece.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about, like in short, about what that project was?
Yeah. So hopefully it's okay with Mr. Maurizio Cercini if I tell you about this, but it should be, because he has a National Geographic special that you can look at.
Yep, I saw that.
So if you go online and do a search for Maurizio Cercini, the Battle of Anghiari, you will see the work that he's done over the last 30 years. So the Battle of Anghiari was Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece. It's a fresco that was in Florence, Italy, that's been lost throughout history, and supposedly is the one that acclaimed the title of the greatest of all time, because it was the first one that also was considered to be medically accurate. So it disappeared. Nobody knows where the original is, but we know what it should look like, because thousands of people would come and marvel at it, and they would replicate it. So they would practice. And there are a lot of duplicates that are replicas that are finished out there, so you can see what it looks like. Maurizio Cercini got involved in the 1970s searching for this masterpiece, and they think that they've located it at a location in Florence, Italy. It's a government building called Palazzo Vecchio. It's the Hall of the 500, so that's where the 500 diplomats would meet in Italy. Well, if you look at this building now, it's covered with just beautiful Vasari paintings everywhere and frescoes on the wall. You can't really approach them, but Dr. Maurizio Serracini has identified the location of where he thinks the original Leonardo da Vinci Battle of Anghiari is located. The story is that it is located exactly where Leonardo left it. Vasari was an admirer of da Vinci, so he wouldn't have taken his original artwork down. The point is that they've located where the Vasari painting is, where they think that the Battle of Anghiari would have been located. And so during my last visit to Europe, unbeknownst to him, I had some new technology that we were working with through one of my other clients in another aerospace industry, and has to do with 3D single-sided computed tomography scanning.
Okay.
Question is, if the Leonardo da Vinci Battle of Anghiari is behind that location, that's one thing. And they've taken paint samples where they think that they've identified it positively. But in order to prove 100% to the general population that is there, we need a picture of something. We need a 100% definite image. And the question is, if even by using this new single-sided computed tomography technology, from a radiographic standpoint, is it possible to detect paint layers, microns of lead-based paint layers through 6 centimeters of brick? That's a tough radiographic technique. We don't know. So we're in the process of setting up a mock system to see if, a mock-up wall, to see if it is possible to do that. If it is, then we'll take it to the next step and actually write a presentation, a white paper that can then be presented to the Italian government and the U.S. Embassy.
Wow.
And who knows, perhaps we will get permission for actually doing a on-site inspection to see if we can prove that it's there. Or not we, but Maurizio Serracini. He's the one that's heading this project up.
Okay, interesting. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your advice, and I hope this talk was helpful to a lot of people out there.
Yes.
And I look forward to keep in touch with you for your future cruise parties.
Yes, that was fun.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much.